more insight on the attack, National Security and Foreign Policy Vice President at the Heritage Foundation, Lieutenant Colonel James Carfano. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great to see you in person. In the morning, we talk a lot over satellite. In reference to the latest attack, let's begin there. We have 2 more U.S. service members killed in Afghanistan. We've been talking about getting them out. This is being described as an insider attack at this point. We know that it involved 2 U.S. Army members from the 7th Special Forces Group, also known as the Green Berets.
So here's what's really interesting about that. A few years ago, this was actually quite common. They call it blue on blue. So friendly forces, Afghan American forces or other allied forces winding up shooting at each other, whether it was engineered or whatever, mostly by the Taliban. But then a couple of things happened. One is we all got much better at dealing with this, adopting procedures to limit this kind of stuff. 2, the Afghan military actually got much more professional. So we see less uniforms loose, less people running around. And the third one is Americans are doing less combat. We're in an advise and support role. We're not fighting as much as we used to, and our numbers are much smaller. So this is actually kind of an anomaly as opposed to business as usual in Afghanistan.
Yeah, an anomaly, but at the same time, it has still happened, and we have 2 service members dead as a result of it. And apparently, from what I understand, and you can explain this to me a little bit more, the U.S. military is not officially calling it an insider attack because although the suspect did have on an Afghan uniform, he was not involved in this direct mission that was taking place.
And that's, again, something that we've seen before. It used to be actually fairly prevalent. You would get an Afghan uniform, put it on, and then just show up, and people think, oh, you're an Afghan, but you're really a Taliban fighter. The other scenario is you would get a Taliban fighter and get them into the Afghan military and have them attack people, or you would bribe or you'd somehow get a Taliban soldier to do this. So we know about these things, so we do vetting, we do coordination, so they're much less prevalent.
And we also know in this particular province, in this area, there is a small home of ISIS fighters, about 500 or so located there. So we still don't know at this point who's claiming responsibility for the attack.
Yeah, and this is like really crucial.
Yeah.
Why are the Taliban at the negotiating table? Because they know they can't win. ISIS cannot win. As long as we are there and backing up the Afghan military, who's doing all of the fighting, they are building a future for their country, and the other side can't win. That's why oftentimes we see these incidents, sometimes engineered, because what they would like to do is, oh, look, the war's in Willowville, America should just turn it back and leave. That's exactly the wrong message to take away.
Well, that leads me into my next question, because NATO, of course, now considering leaving Afghanistan. At the same time, we know that President Trump has promised to remove our troops from there, and we heard Trey Ying's talking about the latest numbers, about 13,000 or so still there. But you think that we should stay there?
Well, I think one is NATO will leave when we leave.
Okay.
We're going to go in. We went in together. We'll come out together. This administration has already made a decision. It's going to go to about a little less than 9,000 troops. That's about the right number to sustain advise and assist missions and do counterterrorism. It's the number that was there when the president came in office. They've already made that decision, and they've already decided that regardless of how the peace talks come out, those troops will stay there until the Taliban have actually proven that the levels of violence have gone down and that the country is stable. So, in a sense, the decisions are already cooked. The president's already made the right choice. And as tragic as incidents like they are, they won't take the president off his course.
Our prayers, of course, with all of those family members impacted by this. But then finally, there are some successes that we need to talk about in terms of President Trump and his campaign, the latest being yet another terrorist successfully killed. Yeah,
these are very important. I think not calling it a war on terrorism anymore makes perfect sense. But they're out there trying to reconstitute that infrastructure, do the kinds of things like they did before. And what you never want the leadership to have is a good night's rest or a safe haven. And the fact that we can continue to go and have the intelligence worldwide to find leaders of significant groups and take them out, that puts a lot of operational strain on the other side, and it really keeps them from coming back and organizing the massive kind of attacks like they did on 9/11.
And leaders being key, that key word, and then also it impacts the morale. And we know that social media spreading and increasing morale is a large way that they increase their numbers.
And this is what's really important. People say, well, that's not going to solve the problem. And they're right. It's not going to solve the problem. But it's a key component of keeping the threat under control, and we have to keep doing it.
All right, James, thank you so much. Great to see you. Thank you.